Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. John DeLynn. It's November 19th, 2021, and we are so incredibly excited for today's guest. Today, we have in studio a real kind of legend, I think. His name is, for the three of you who don't know, his name is Cody Alan. Hey, Cody.
Hello.
Welcome to Mormon Stories Podcast.
John, it is so good to be here. Thank you for having me. This is like years in the making that I would have the chance to be on Mormon Stories and share my story. And so I'm thrilled to be here. I'm a fan, first of all. I want you to know that. Like, I love what you do. I love the podcast. And right after I came out, people should know you called and said, "Hey, don't you want to come in?" I was like, "Oh God, I really want to, John." But and that was 2017. I'm like, I need to like get myself right first. It was such an overwhelming moment. And I wanted to make sure I could tell the story in full and feel good about it. And so I wrote a book, which made me feel much better about it. And about talking more about my faith struggle and about my journey, about my family. And so the culmination of all those things has sort of led me now to this moment where we can get together and have this chat finally. So thank you again for having me.
My pleasure. We have a mutual friend, Jeremy, right?
Yeah, Jeremy Young.
Yeah. Shout out to Jeremy. And we are here. I just finished this morning an amazing new book. You've been going around the country kind of promoting this book. I think you were even on Good Morning America, right?
Yeah, we did New York and did Today's Show and
Today's Show. Yeah.
The Hoda. And
you met Hoda.
I love Gail King. We met up. She's become a friend of mine over the years. And had dinner with Gail, and she's reading the book. And I got everybody reading the book, so which is a good thing.
So the book is Here's the Thing, Lessons on Listening, Life, and Love by Cody Alan. For those of you who don't know who Cody is, he is the host and executive producer of CMT Radio, which has millions of listeners on more than 200 radio stations across the United States. He is also host or co-host of CMT's flagship music show, Hot 20 Countdown. His face is seen in 90 million homes. He is sort of friends on a first name basis with people like Taylor Swift, Dolly Parton, Blake Shelton, Garth Brooks, Tim McGraw, and a bunch of country and Western musicians that I've never heard of because that's not my particular genre.
I love that you call it country and Western as well.
What is the term?
Well, we dropped the Western, I think, somewhere in the late 70s.
I grew up in Texas in the 70s, so sorry.
So I haven't heard country and Western, but I appreciate it.
Country? What do they say? Country?
Country.
Okay.
Country, yeah.
Sure.
And it's great to be, talk about those houses that I'm in. It's great to be in your house. I didn't know you lived here in the basement of the Mormon Stories podcast, but apparently this is also John's home. I see trail mix over there. We've got some nice lighting, some West Elm furniture. Not really. Did you steal these chairs from a congregation?
We used to have Thrive meetings here until COVID.
Okay.
So we turned it into a production studio when COVID hit.
There's a ward house right now missing their chairs because of this.
There's a mother who should be nursing a baby in one of these chairs in one of the nursing rooms.
Right.
And we have Carah Burrell with us. Hey, Carah, welcome.
Yeah, I'm over here. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, so glad to have you, Carah.
Thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Great to meet you. Also,
yeah, so good to meet you.
I'm a huge fan of John's. As I mentioned, I just regard him so highly, and I love the kind of work that he's doing that really is making a difference in a lot of people's lives. But great recently to have also you part of the show. And this cast you also have built over the last little bit of people who can really speak to the subjects so clearly and eloquently. Gerardo I met earlier, and all kinds of great people around you. So well done.
Gerardo woke up early to get our lighting just right. So shout out to Gerardo. Thanks so much. So for those of you who don't know, Cody has got an amazing story. He grows up in South Carolina. We're going to cover it, but he grows up in South Carolina, ends up converting to the Mormon Church as a teenish, serves a Mormon mission, and does all the Mormon things, gets married, has kids. But there's this one tiny, and has a successful career as a radio disc jockey / executive and multiple radio stations, including Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
And inconveniently happened to know inside from a young age that he was gay. Yeah. So he had to navigate a mixed faith marriage, mixed orientation marriage, which we're going to talk about, and eventually do something super hard, which is not only come out to your Mormon spouse and kids as gay, navigate that, but also do that in the public eye as a celebrity in the country scene, literally in Nashville and the South. And so it's an epic, important story. And that's what's covered in this amazing book. Here's the thing. And we get Cody for 2 full hours to kind of just have him tell his Mormon story. And by the way, you mentioned like Spencer W. Kimball and the Miracle of Forgiveness. You mentioned Ty Mansfield.
Oh, absolutely.
So you actually mention Mormon stuff in the book, but the book's focus isn't your Mormon journey. You touch on that. So that's what we get to do, is kind of dig into your Mormon journey.
Yeah. So there's a whole chapter on my mission, what I learned from it, and then how I came to love the faith, and then later in life with my kids and family, and how we dealt with the faith in dealing with my challenges. So but I wanted to make sure that it was true to what I know, what I felt at the time, and the fact that I did read The Miracle of Forgiveness and Ty Mansfield's book, and thought,
was it in Quiet Desperation? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I thought, oh gosh, that's I was left with no answers and feeling worse about myself afterwards, as many people do.
Yeah, we'll come to that.
Okay.
All right. So, and we're live streaming this on YouTube and Facebook. So we would invite our live stream listeners to feel free to comment or ask questions. Carah's going to aggregate those and either sprinkle them in or kind of save them to the end, whatever Carah decides makes sense. Sound good, Carah?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, where does your story begin? And I'm just dying to know, you talk about this in the book, but like, how does a smart, up and coming, talented kid become a Mormon in the South? Of all places. But back up and talk about your family, whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, sure. I grew up in a house with music all the time. My dad had an incredible vinyl collection.
Vinyl.
A wall full of it. I mean, I lived in a trailer for the first 10 years of my life. My mom and dad finally were able to buy a home in the suburbs after that. In both places, I remember a wall in their bedroom, much to the chagrin of my mother, was filled with stacks and stacks and stacks of wax of vinyl records. And he had an incredible sound system, gigantic Pioneer speakers, and he would play this music constantly, blaring out of those speakers, 24/7, or whenever he could. My mom wasn't yelling at him to turn it down.
Mostly country or everything?
It was country, and it was rock and roll. He was a big fan of like the Billy Joels and Elton Johns of the day.
You like Billy Joel growing up?
Of course. Yeah, he played all the Billy Joel stuff, which I, of course, only the good die young. So I loved all that stuff. And I loved, at the time, Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton. That was sort of, this has been 80s.
Yeah.
All those huge sort of crossover pop hits that the country acts. Oak Ridge Boys,
Charlie Daniels Band.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Charlie Daniels, Devil Went Down to Georgia. So I was exposed to all that stuff. Yeah. Alabama was a big player at that time.
I grew up in Texas, so I share that with you, kind of a Southern upbringing.
There you go. Yeah. So because of all that, my dad would also listen to the radio, and I would hear on the radio in between the songs all the stories about the artists and the stories behind how the songs came to be. And I just was fascinated by it. I thought, man, I'd like to be that guy telling those stories, and telling people about music and getting excited about the artist and the artistry. And so for whatever reason, that was deep within my soul and being, that's what I was going to do. I'm going to be a broadcaster. And so from that tender age of whatever, probably toddler, of hearing all that music to, I remember 9, 10, starting sort of my own little radio station in the house. I talk about in the book how I had a Mr. Microphone long before these nice microphones you have here were ever invented. There was something where you could, and the karaoke machines were no thing back then. So you had to have a Mr. Microphone, which had a wire that hung from it. And then you would tune into 89.7 on your FM receiver, and then you could hear your voice magically come out of the speakers. So it was, in fact, this amazing device as a kid that allowed me to broadcast. So I used to, have a range of about 20, 25 feet, the little wire would. So I would cram it through my screen window in the house, in my room, and then I would go out to my mom and dad's car, and whatever was playing inside on the radio or in my room, I could be able to hear on their radio in the car. So I really had my own little mock radio station there 652 Cedarfield Lane, West Columbia, South Carolina. I had my own little transmitter and broadcast going. And then I thought, man, I'd love to be on TV. I thought TV weatherman, that is my calling. So I used to make like cardboard weather maps with all the forecasts for my mom and dad. So they were so instrumental in encouraging all this. And I grew up in a house that was very supportive. So you see that kind of support, getting to be 15 years old, keys to the car. I went down to the local radio station and said, hey, I want to be on the air. Lucky for me, they said,
15.
Yeah, you can come in for the summer and, do some, watch the DJs, help with like the copy machine or pour some coffee, clean up behind everybody. And I was like, I wanted my foot in the door so badly. I didn't care. So I was all about it. And I worked for that summer making no money, but just soaking up like a sponge everything that happened at a radio station. And so when someone got sick on a late night graveyard shift on the weekends, the program director called me and said, hey, could you fill in tonight? And it was a midnight to 6 kind of thing where you go in at 11:30, get off at 6 a.m. and you work all night long. And I was all about it, of course. So my mom and dad, for those few months where I did that weekend shift, after I got my own like permanent gig going at the station, my mom and dad would take me because the South Carolina laws would not allow a teenager my age. I only had a permit. They would not allow you to drive after dark. So in other words, my mom would have to drive me at 11:30 at night to work. My dad would pick me up at 6 a.m. And so they did this, for years until I actually was able to drive myself. But
so your first gig actually appearing on a radio show was it what age?
15.
Wow.
15 years old.
Amazing.
Yeah, I was on the air since then. And I haven't stopped since.
Did you have a deep voice or?
No, I look back and it was terrible, John. I thought I was great. I mean, I thought I was like so good. I got this. And then you realize, and I do have still the cassettes, in fact, in an old trunk. And I've taken them out since I started writing the book because I wanted to review them and see how atrocious they really were. And it's bad. But I was mimicking other people. I was pretending to be something I wasn't, which was good at radio.
Fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it. And eventually, I got a little better at it. I kept studying the craft and figured myself out, which is also something I really talk about heavily in the book, is like how important professionally it was to sort of have a process of figuring myself out, parallel to figuring lots of other things out in my life as well.
I get the sense that your family was kind of working class a little bit, and
sure.
Your parents sacrificed a lot to invest in your career. That was impressive. The support your parents gave you.
Yep.
Really quickly, I had the idea of becoming a DJ myself growing up, and my dad said, you don't make any money, so don't do it because DJs are poor because everyone wants to be one.
Right.
No one ever told you that?
No one ever told me that. And I did have I take it back. I did have a few people say radio. Oof, don't want to do that. That's not the business you want to be in. And it's happened since a few times, over the years. But I always go back to it because I feel like it's in my blood. I was born to do it. I was born to be on the air. And I'm so grateful that I have, whatever God-given talent given to me that I was able to like make into something bigger than it existed at first. And so, yeah, I've been very lucky, you could say, or I worked hard for it. I know that. I worked hard at lots of stations, and I took gigs and made decisions along the way that hopefully built something now that can stand.
For sure. Tell us really quickly what type of religious upbringing you had. Were you raised in a church or in a Christian church?
Yep.
And what led to you even having Mormonism cross your mind?
Well, my mom and dad were pretty religious. We went regularly. My mom was much more gung-ho, I think, than my dad most of the time, although he went with us to church. But I remember Sunday mornings at Southern Baptist most of my life. We jumped around a little bit, but all kind of Southern Christian churches. I remember going to a Nazarene church for a little while, visiting a Lutheran church with my friends. Been in a Methodist church as a kid as well, but really Southern Baptist is kind of the roots of my upbringing. It was also the roots of not just my immediate family, but my grandpa was a Southern Baptist.
They don't tend to love Mormons.
No, they don't. And
especially not in the 80s.
Yes. And it was a different kind of approach. We all know that Southern Baptists, I don't disparage anyone else's preference in how they want to be taught or what they like on a Sunday, but to me, it was always very scary, almost sort of if I don't do something, God does something to me.
Like fire and brimstone stuff.
Yeah. And so I just never felt it in my heart. So when I had a friend who was a Mormon who I'd known for years, and by the way, I was at school, high school, I had a great group of Mormon friends. They were all, and I thought they were very cool people, and I just loved them. So when one of them invited me to church, I went, and I thought, man, this is really different, because you see that there's not one guy preaching on a pedestal, but the congregation is giving talks, and there's a bit of a softness almost to the Sunday approach. And then I learned about the missionaries. I thought that was so cool to have this sort of like army brigade for God. And then as I got to more of the doctrine, I thought this is really cool. The idea of eternal family. I knew I was gay at the time, but I also thought I'm not going to go against what I felt like others wanted me to do, which was be straight and have a family. And that comes back a little bit, John, to just childhood. I think I knew from a very young age I was different, and but I didn't have anyone around me. There was no Ellen. I didn't have Will and Grace. There was no media to turn to say, oh, there's someone like me. I didn't have any friends who were gay. Nobody in my family. I didn't have an uncle. I didn't have, there was no one. And so I just thought it's just me. Just me. So I very much sort of towed the line with what I thought I was supposed to do, thinking that maybe it would go away at some point, or maybe I would just work my way through it, knowing that I did have the same-sex attraction, as they say. So going back to the church thing a little bit, so I started taking the missionary discussions. And
At what age?
I was 18.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The missionaries are cool. I mean, they were like me. And I thought, man, it's fun. And my mom really raised me to believe in things bigger than myself. I talk about how in the book, often we'd pray and my mom would bring up angels in heaven, and she would describe the rapture, and I could picture Jesus and the trumpets and we've seen that photo or that not photo. It's a painting in the church where, the one I'm talking about, Jesus coming down from the heavens with the angels on all sides. And that visualization to me was real. And so when I heard about Joseph Smith and angels, I just thought, okay, yeah, that could happen. I believe that could happen, because I think God still is around. And so for me, the message wasn't a lot to swallow. It was like, okay, yeah, this is really interesting and good stuff. And so I studied it pretty hard. And
this is pre-internet, right?
Yeah, pre-internet.
So you wouldn't have had a lot of the
didn't have
internet resources to kind of investigate.
Godmakers was out. I remember seeing that. My mom.
You saw Godmakers before you joined?
Yeah.
Whoa.
What's wrong with me, right? Why did I not?
No. That's cool. I mean, yeah. We interviewed Ed Decker, the creator of the Godmakers, on Mormon Stories recently.
I heard that.
Oh, okay.
Yep, because I wanted to hear that guy's story.
But that didn't deter you.
It didn't. I don't know why. I maybe you call it spirit or just intuition in my own heart. I felt good about the church. And there's a tribe that begins to form around you as well. We all know that when you start to investigate the church. There's great community there.
Was it a ward
or
a branch?
It's a branch.
Okay.
And later I'd become like the first missionary to leave from my branch, believe it or not. It's crazy. So, but my point is that with all that love and all that green jello that's served, you start to just fall in love with the church for reasons that you can't quite explain, but they just feel good. Some may call that the spirit. And but that definitely is it definitely led me sort of down that road to feel good about it and to defend it, because I thought some of the stuff in that video was like, what? That's not true. I've been there. Later to find out there is lots of truth there in that video. Again, doctrinally not sound, airbrushed over the years, all that doctrine to make it look better. I believe. And so, yeah, it was, it only became a struggle later for me, some of that stuff. And particularly on my mission is when it really kind of hit me that maybe I need to investigate some of these things a little more.
I had the thought that if you want to be not gay, what's a better church to join than the Mormon Church to help you be not gay?
To cloak it, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Good point. I don't know that was even in my head.
Consciously.
Yeah. But I did seek out, like, what does God want me to do? Because
Mhm.
I thought, I just need to get that right. And these other problems I have, these internal things I'm working through will just work themselves out. So that's what I thought. Of course, we learned later that that's not exactly how it works. But I did feel like I was headed in the right direction because I was doing what God wanted.
Did you do that thing where you pray and you get the answer like as you're praying, or was it more just a building feeling that grew for you? Because later you talk about God not necessarily being there for you. I'm wondering how you felt God was communicating this to you at the time when you were joining.
It felt good to pray. It felt good to pray. It still does for me.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I think that there was not, to answer your question, a overwhelming lightning bolt revelation moment. It was just a process. But I knew I felt better when I got up off my knees and said my prayers, and that carried me. And whether that is just a strength of faith and just strong belief in my head that then translates to my heart, I don't know. But by the way, it still exists now, even though I'm on the other side. I'm on the dark side, right? Supposedly,
or the light side.
The light side. Yes,
that's your point.
Yeah, yeah. So it's still the same. I thought it would change, honestly. That somehow that feeling of goodness, that wanting to be Christ-like and kind to the people around me, would somehow go away because I'd be so evil and gay, right? The truth is, it doesn't, and I know I'm more empathetic now. I'm a better person now. I'm more Christ-like now than I was before, because I'm just honest. It's all those things about being a person of integrity that the church teaches, all the values that we espouse, supposedly, and that I've always felt in my heart I wanted to be. Now I can be that and not be a fraud.
How did your family react to you joining the church? Not just your immediate family, but your extended family. Were they worried? Were they concerned?
Yeah, for sure. I think my mom was most worried because she was super faithful to her Christian and Southern Christian beliefs. And yet there was a great deal of love and support there, which was very surprising as well. I mean, I did watch the Godmakers with her. And
really?
Yeah. And then I let it digest a little bit, and she did too. And then I came back to it and I said, I just feel like in my heart, this is what I want to do. I want to be a good, noble person. And I love what I'm learning, and it makes me feel like I can be a better person because of it. And I think that was enough, for her to say, okay, well, you're your own man, 18 years old, you got to decide. And so she was respectful of that. And that also extended to my grandpa, who I was very close with, who was, again, Southern Baptist, very involved in his church. He was along the same lines, concerned and disappointed, I think, in me. His brother, who lived in Pocatello, Idaho.
Pocatello.
Yeah, I love it. His brother was my Uncle Billy. He was a Mormon. He converted because his wife was a Mormon, and believed in the church and was strong in his beliefs. And so I really admired Uncle Billy, and of course that helped my conversation with my grandpa to say, hey, Uncle Billy's a believer in what I believe too, and we also believe in Jesus Christ. And so I went through all the things that he was concerned about doctrinally, in hopes of making him feel better. And I think it helped. I think he knew that I had a good heart, that I was trying to do what I felt was right. And again, going back to just being a person of integrity throughout my life, he really thought that I was doing what I felt what I was supposed to do. And he respected that, although I think it was tough to swallow.
Yeah. So you, as you mentioned, you have a whole chapter in your book dedicated to your mission in Washington State, right?
Yep. Went to Seattle.
Anything you want to share about your mission? Like what age did you go on your mission?
Yeah, it would have been the year after joining. Yeah. So like 19.
Wow. And you didn't have a whole lifetime of seminary and church education, Sunday school.
Yeah.
You're just like, get baptized and then go on a mission.
Yeah.
Preach the gospel.
Yeah, it was again, I was looking for answers. I was looking for my place in the world. I think when you're at a tender age like that, and for me, I didn't feel like I needed to go to college yet. I did take some classes right around that time to sort of figure myself out, and I thought, this is boring, and I've already got a career. So I was already on the radio. I was already, in high school, I was voted most likely to succeed. So I was like, I felt like I had a good head on my shoulder. And so going on a mission felt like a good, noble, almost Peace Corps or military sort of thing to do, because it would make me a better person over 2 years. And I thought that's a good thing to do. So I had lots of encouragement, of course, from the families in the branch and beyond, including my family out here in Pocatello. So I felt good about it.
Yeah, and you had some success. You brought many people to Christ, so to speak.
Yeah, I did. I think I was a really good missionary. I just worked hard and worked smart, and I tried to be positive, and I just loved the work. It was there were definitely moments, and I talk about in the book a few times where I was like, I can't do this anymore.
What happened?
I started having doubts. I started, learning more about polygamy.
How'd you learn about that as a missionary?
Well, I think I've been given maybe some anti-literature from someone's door we knocked on. I remember going home with it and let me just look at it and I'll just study this and see what's up. And of course, it was the typical things that I had heard before. And polygamy, look, I was gay. I was hiding it. Eventually, I'd be with one woman.
But you had never, just to be clear to the audience, you had never like dated a boy or kissed a boy or any of that stuff. So you were
no one knew.
You felt those feelings, but I just don't want people to think you had like not that matters, but like
I knew how I felt.
Yeah.
I knew that I was more into. Again, I describe it as a kid. I was more into the shape of Batman over Wonder Woman. I just knew that.
The men's underwear catalog, right?
And the men's underwear catalogs I talk about in the book as well, because I hid those from my mom, like the cliches. You hide the Playboys under the bed. It was underwear magazines for me, men's underwear, and I'd hopefully get to the mailbox every month before my mom or dad ever saw that. I was always fearful they were going to catch me in that and ask questions. Never happened though. So going back to the mission though, knowing I was gay and thinking about polygamy, I thought it'd be hard enough to have like one woman, but then the idea of like multiple. I mean, think about that as a gay person. You're like, I can't do that. That's crazy. And outside of that, just from the society that we live in now, it seems so bizarre. And I'd been to the temple. The temple freaked me out a little bit, and I had struggled with that from the get-go. And then as I started delving a little more into sort of the Joseph Smith, all those issues from where the book came from, and all the possibilities of it being from made-up sources in and around Palmyra and beyond. All those things just started to get to me. So I called an old friend back home, and every time I got close to leaving, he kind of helped me through it. And I asked him poignant questions about the doctrine, and he would help me through it. And he had some good answers for almost everything. So I ended up sort of staying.
I love the conversation you had with your mission president and what his response was.
It will be one of the things that taught me how to handle tough situations later in my life. I always go back to that conversation and dealing with anything that's difficult with someone I love, or even an employee or someone I work with who I need to counsel in some way. But I wanted to leave because I felt I was missing home. The mission was tough. I was tired of the bike. I was questioning all the doctrine, and I second guessing myself that I'd even been there. Why did I come here in the first place? And so I knew I needed to just have a solid talk with my mission president. So he drove up to Everett, Washington. I'll never forget. We were in this basement apartment, crummy cement walls, bad furniture. And he came in, and I told him how I felt, just what I just described. and said, I think I need to go home. And he said, you choose. I will love you no matter what you choose. If you need to go home, I will support you. But I want that to be your choice. And I didn't expect that. I expect him to say, no, you've made this decision. You'll be here for 2 years. Stick it out. You're fine. That's what I thought it was going to be a tough love sort of approach. And it was completely not what I expected. And it floored me because it showed, I believe, this sort of unconditional love that I think I want to carry, that I think Christ carries, and a Christ-like attitude is that's what it is. It's so, it stuck with me. Every time I'm with my kids and it's been a tough situation or some weird, or not weird, but difficult decision they've had to make, I've always kind of leaned on that counsel and try to go back to that moment and let them know that I love you. And you've got to make that decision because it's really big. I can't make it for you, but I will love you either way. And that's powerful. So I was very grateful for that moment. And I ended up staying, of course, because it was in my decision to make, I felt, and I was able to make that decision.
Mm.
Yeah.
And you stayed.
And I stayed. Yeah.
It worked.
Right.
But it sounds like a great guy.
Great guy. Yeah. And so many great people I've met over the years as well in the church. I do not bash the church in this book. I did not want it to be a book about that because I've had great experiences. But I did want to point out some flaws and some of the, what I call airbrushing, some of the face tuning that has happened over the years. If you got the app Facetune, yeah, you can do anything with that app. Make your chin bigger, smaller, whatever, your nose. So I think the church has done a little bit of that. And I do point those things out. And
Sure.
My sort of metamorphosis into who I believe God is. So all that I cover.
Yeah. Carah, did someone, anything from the comment section?
Let me just read Jeremy Young's comment really quick. He said, love you, Cody. Thanks for sharing your story. Your story is going to help so many people. So I agree with that as well.
Hey, Jeremy. Shout out to Jeremy. He's in Washington now. So
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Love that guy.
All right. Thanks.
Good
Carah.
Dude.
Thanks, Carah. All right. So thanks for sharing something so vulnerable and beautiful and powerful. I love it that you are willing to embrace the good. You're willing to discuss openly the problems, but you're also not trying to make that claim that it's all bad. It's all been bad and there wasn't any good.
Mm-hmm.
That balanced approach, I want to just model on Mormon Stories.
You do such a great job of that, I do believe. And I think anyone who has a faith crisis coming out of the church, it's so incredibly difficult. And no one wants to look back at a chapter of their life that was so dedicated to the church and go, it was all a waste. I think we want to look back and say, no, there were really good things that came from that. And the story I just shared about my mission president is one of those for me. And there are many others that are positive. And I always look at it as, okay, no, I learned a lot in those chapters, the chapters I was living in the Mormon church. And so that's all good. I learned a lot of stuff I didn't like too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's,
coming.
That's coming. But I do think we need to, anyone, and I know many of your listeners are dealing with that right now, perhaps. How do I cope with this idea that I've wasted time in the church? And I just don't want people to think that. Didn't waste time. Look at the positive you did gain. And, realize truth is truth. And the truth will set you free eventually. Right? Sounds cliche, but it's true.
So as you read, here's the thing. I really enjoyed you talking about your career, coming off your mission, starting to be a DJ, working your way up, and the way that you really brought energy and creativity to build the programming and the marketing in the various radio stations you worked for, Dallas and in Florida,
Orlando.
in Orlando. We'll refer to listeners more for your career kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If that's okay, just because we want them to buy and read this book because it's so important.
And Salt Lake City too.
Doing
radio in Salt Lake is a whole different ball of wax.
Before
it was a
Nashville.
whole different, crazy, awesome experience. One that I'd never had. I always wanted because I wanted to live here. Because I mean, listen, I love waking up at these mountains. I loved it this morning. I drove past the temple last night and this morning. I mean, I love these streets. There's so much about Salt Lake I love. So I hoped for a blue sky morning today. It was one of those gray ones in Salt Lake where you don't get this or the vivid mountains bouncing across the blue skies, but maybe tomorrow morning. So, but I do love it here. So, and I do talk about the radio experiences I had here, which were probably the most adventurous. And then that radio experience bringing me to meet the prophet at some point as well is covered in the book, which was a whole different thing that I think people will enjoy reading.
Yeah, I may want to jump to that, but tell us how you get off your mission. I get the sense that you're trying to stay Mormon. It seems like you may have tried beer a couple times, but you were also, you wanted to marry a woman and you wanted to kind of live the Mormon, kind of the traditional Mormon family. Yeah, so talk about navigating being a single return missionary in the South, and then eventually finding your wife and deciding to marry a woman as a closeted gay Mormon man.
Yeah, how does that happen? I mean, I get that people would say it's such a mystery of how that might happen to somebody, particularly in 2021. We don't understand it. But again, we're going back 20, 30 years here, this process of me coming to where I am now. So yeah, I came off my mission and worked radio, which was the centerpiece of my life, the biggest thing that I had going, and took up all my time. And then I moved to Dallas from Orlando, and I got a big job at a big radio station, which of course at 20,
the Wolf? Is that
the Wolf, yeah. Right? And at 23 maybe, and it was super scary because it was millions of people listening, and the potential there to screw up was so great. So I was trying not to mess that up, and I got set up on a blind date with Teresa, and I saw a picture of her, and she was so cute and beautiful, and I thought, I need to figure out myself anyway. So I didn't date a whole lot. I did date a few Mormon girls, but I was like, not for me. That one, not for me. Until I met Teresa. She was the only one that I thought, oh wow, there's something there. There's something special about her that I really do like. And we love spending time together. She loved country music. I was the country music king at the time, even with the cowboy hat on and some boots and some Wranglers, John. I was, and I show you some pictures of that, but I was definitely sort of living that Texas life that I sort of like. I was a little bit of a caricature of the cowboy costume was in fact a costume a lot of times, but nonetheless, I kind of liked being in Texas and I liked doing country music, and she sort of liked all that about me. And, I was playing a little bit of a part, no doubt about that. But I also was going to work every day and playing country songs and trying to relate to the audience, which was Texans. So I was trying to be as close to the audience as I could be. So when we got together, again, blind date style, we just kind of hit it off. She was a lot of fun. And I think she kind of dug me. And there's something about that flurry of butterflies because someone likes you that is very attractive, even though I knew, again, my inclinations are elsewhere. I liked her. I liked being around her, and her overwhelming me with such love and such interest was very attractive to me. So I kind of liked all that, and so we just kind of worked. And before long, we started talking about getting married, and we got married, and then we had our first kid. And
not in the temple. I didn't.
No,
that wasn't clear.
She's not a Mormon, and at this point, she
in the story.
Yeah, at this point in the story, and then year or so, maybe 2 years after getting married, I said, my church is kind of important to me. Maybe we ought to talk about getting the discussions with the missionaries, and of course, with that come young men to the house who are energetic and fun themselves and charismatic, and they teach her the gospel, and she just loved it. And somewhat reluctant. Again, she came like me from a Southern Baptist family who didn't necessarily agree, and so she had to make her own decision. But I think she loved me enough, and I certainly was supportive of her joining the church. And we really got from there super involved. all the callings, all the things with the full family in tow, and sort of made that picket fence, Mormon family in the frames on the mantle thing work. That's what we were going to be. And I was thrilled over that because it's something I dreamed of. Didn't know if it would ever happen for me. Again, I'd never really dated. But she was special and she was spunky and fun. And, I spent a whole chapter talking about the kind of Texan she was, because she's just, spitfire, and yet the most compassionate, big-hearted person you'll ever meet. Just an all-around great person. So I knew if I was going to marry anybody, I could marry her.
Yeah. And I don't think straight people have any idea what it might be like to marry someone you're not necessarily attracted to, or to commit your life to somebody for whom, their gender isn't something that kind of naturally calls to you psychologically or sexually or whatever. Was it hard? And if it was hard, in what ways was it hard? And how did you mask or cope with the parts that were hard? Because obviously you were close friends and you loved her, right?
Mm-hmm.
Were there hard parts?
Yeah, but honestly, I had psyched myself out so much, and I had dug that hole so deep in my soul about being gay. It's like a box you put on a shelf and you never open. I had let that box just sit up on the shelf, and I was never going to open it. And I thought, I can figure this out because she's cool. And I'll figure out the sex part. We got through those things, and it wasn't horrific. I'm sorry, it wasn't.
You didn't experience aversion. Some people experience aversion.
Some people do, and I didn't experience that. Okay. I just thought I had never had sex, so I'm like, maybe this is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah. And
so I just worked through it. So I didn't experience those negative.
I mean, that says a lot. Work through it. That actually says a lot, because I think other people. Yeah. Because for some, it just might come more natural or be super exciting.
Right.
Not something you work through, maybe.
Yep. You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
For me, it was like, let's just get it done. It sounds so bad to say this. Sex. Get it done. Let's get it done.
Yeah.
And from like your philosophy of what you understood about Mormonism at that point, you said you were pretty much all in. So what were your ideas about what it meant to be gay that you couldn't even open that box? Because what would that mean for you to open that box, to even look at it?
Telling anyone was just foreign to me. I couldn't even imagine telling. I couldn't even tell myself, really. I just thought, again, it's just something I got to keep inside because I can't say anything about it. Here's a story that's not in the book that I think relates to your question. I was on my mission teaching a young man, me and my companion, with a family who were member referral situation. And the kid, who probably was 16, 17, something like that, he asked me about, well, what about gay people? What does your church believe about that? And what is something wrong with them? And it's like a bold question. And of course, my companion, silent. So is everybody else in the room. And then all of a sudden, I felt like I could maybe explain it from the standpoint of we all have strengths. We all have things we also have to work through. And so I went to sort of that thought process. And frankly, I hate when people call it a weakness. I know the scripture that I'm pointing to, I think it may be in Mosiah or either, maybe. But that one about your strength becomes your weak, or your weakness becomes your strength. And I thought, okay, that's how I can explain this. It's just about making that your weakness your strength, figuring. And at the time, the people in the room, afterwards, the family was like, "Wow, that was a great answer." And I was like, "I don't know, was it a great answer?" Because it was like, and I started from there. It sort of relates to like trying to figure out how I could reconcile the two, and I just never could, honestly, in the end, reconcile the depth of what the faith believes versus what I know is the truth.
Yeah.
Having sex with a woman was never a strength of yours. Never became a strength. Is what you're saying.
I don't think she complained. Let's get her on the line. So. Let's get her on the line. No, I do think that We never made it an issue and never felt like an issue to me. But the lights are out. I mean, what do you want to say about this?
Yeah.
The lights are out
Yeah.
and you just do things, and maybe in your head sometimes you're thinking of other things.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes you just go with it and you just sort of, again, work through it.
Yeah.
But it never was a really negative experience like I've heard people describe.
Yeah.
I didn't have that.
Yeah.
So I don't know why.
And I also got the sense from your book that you really buried yourself in your work. And so if you are packing down emotion or sadness or longing or whatever, then being a workaholic or being really committed to your work can cover or compensate for a lot for a time, maybe.
Yeah. I think people who are struggling with themselves, LGBTQ plus issues of any kind, I think there is a sense of like, what can I do to distract myself? And you look for things that will keep you from thinking about it. And for me, it was all work. I just loved, and I love my work. So it was easy for me to like totally engross myself in, I got to work on a Sunday. I got to go in, I got to work on the transmitter. I got to work on these music logs, whatever it was. I would always find things that sort of distracted me on times where I was like, I don't even want to think about this today.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and by the way, I say Sunday because I've always thought Sunday was the hardest day for me of the week. I could work all week, even on a Saturday often. But Sunday church, lots of downtime, awkward home teaching visits, all this stuff that seems it was really hard. And it just reminded me constantly that I am a fraud. It reminded me that I was sort of just fake because on one hand, there's all these values you want, the church teaches, honesty, don't lie. And yet I feel like I'm lying all the time. And that over years began to grate on me. Like this isn't working, really. It's not reality.
Right.
It's this sort of fantasy thing that you're trying to make yourself believe and do.
And you mentioned in the book that you read Miracle of Forgiveness. What kind of influence did different Mormon leaders or whatever have about teachings about homosexuality? How did that kind of make up your view about being gay and that you could possibly pray the gay away and that just enough church activity would get you through it? Did you have any kind of philosophy around that?
There's all those talks about mental illness. Somehow you've got something mentally wrong with you if you are same-sex attracted. I knew there was no listening ear there. Even that what was the pamphlet they give out to the kids?
For the Strength of Youth?
For the Strength of Youth.
Yeah.
Even that was like, oh gosh, I didn't want to read that. I don't read it with my kids. I want to read it myself.
Yeah.
Because it was just so blatantly, it just lays it out there in a very black and white way. And I thought, and over time I've realized this, it's not really black and white. Certainly not when it comes to sexuality and orientation. So I got nothing but negative messages about me not being good. Because it's how I was wired, I believe. It's the way I was born, I believe. And I don't think God would have made a mistake with me. And yet that's kind of what you end up having to believe if you are trying to toe the line with the church, is that somehow you're messed up. And you got to be ashamed of that, first of all. Shame is such a driving force behind that thought process. And so for me, it was a lot of that all the time. A lot of just feeling in the dumps because I'm really not good enough. I'm less than, and that feeling constantly of I got to be this happy-go-lucky, awesome guy on TV and radio and do all these things, and yet when all the mics are off, the lights are down, you realize, okay, that I'm really not truthful with people. I'm really not honest, and that sucks. No one wants that.
Yeah. So Teresa had a daughter from her previous marriage, right? And then together you guys had how many kids together? 2.
Yep.
So 3 kids kind of total that okay. And I got the sense that you moved to Utah as like not as a last ditch, because in Nashville you tried the Mormon thing for a little bit too, but Utah was like, we're going to do we're going to figure this Mormon thing out, and Utah's going to help make it all possible.
I think so. I really wanted to live here. I thought it'd be exciting to like be in the home of the faith. And I thought I could do a better job with my kids because the church is everywhere.
Yeah.
And it'd be less likely that they would be influenced by people outside of the church with, who might be wearing shorts that are, above the knee, heaven forbid. So I knew that there was a lot more acceptance here of Mormon beliefs. And I thought that would be good, particularly as my kids were getting a little bit older at that point. So yeah, I definitely wanted to be here. And when I knew there was an opening at one of the local stations, I kind of talked my way into the job and eventually got here. And it was great. We really enjoyed our time here.
Go ahead and tell the David Archuleta and Thomas S. Monson story, because that's good Mormon goodness right there.
Oh yeah, you got to read it in detail in the book.
Whatever you want to share.
My memory of it is so vivid, though, because I'll never forget that being sort of the peak day in Salt Lake City, Utah for me. And again, we were only here for 3 years with the whole fam. So really quick time, but the station was struggling that I was at. It was third place among 5 country radio stations. This market is like filled with radio stations. It's like insanely saturated. And so to break out of that and be, competitive is so hard. So I would look for, we had like a shoestring budget. So I'd look for like crazy propaganda things that we could get attention for, and get people to want to come to the station because they were like, oh, some sort of hype, some sort of like little hook that they might fall in love with or for. So David Archuleta was on American Idol, big TV show at the time. Probably the peak of when that show was popular, ratings wise. And
Carah, did you say you like slept out in the rain or something?
Yeah, I did.
What tell us that just really quick.
That was 2008. David Archuleta versus David Cook, American Idol. I was going to drive there, but my friend's rich dad actually flew us all down there, me and my friends, and we slept
to LA?
To LA outside the Kodak Theater, and we slept on the floor at 3 a.m. so that we could be like 5th in line to go see David, to go to the finale. So I like David Archuleta's stories. I'm in.
Devoted. She was devoted. I love it. Yeah. David was, he was a superstar during the last few weeks of that show. And so, on the final episodes, they actually go to the hometown of the finalist. And so we knew they were coming to Salt Lake City, David's home, this little Murray, Utah boy, to visit his high school and see his life. And so leading up to that, I thought, Napoleon Dynamite was really popular also in Mormon world at the time. Again, I was looking for things that would like touch the audience here. So I thought it'd be fun to like do those on the movie. I voted for Pedro, I think, right? I voted for Pedro. Vote for Pedro.
Yeah.
So I made,
shout out to my friend Jared Hess. He's been on Mormon Stories.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
So I made some that said I voted for David Archuleta.
Vote for
David Archuleta.
Nice.
In that crazy like 70s, 80s font or whatever it was.
White shirt,
red shirt, exactly like the one in the movie. So we started passing those out. We made boxes and boxes of them. I was like, this is the only thing we're going to do marketing wise in my whole tenure here, but we're going to do it. And so I talked to the executives upstairs and I said, we got to do this. It's big. It'll be big. It'll get us a lot of attention. So we started handing out the t-shirts all across town. We'd go down to the malls and wherever we could to hand out these shirts. And so it kind of became a thing. So when Fox came to town, Fox TV, to do the final episodes, they chose our little podunk station, which again, far down in the ratings, not a powerhouse. But they decided they would come to our station to do their live American Idol home visit. So they came into our studios.
Which station was it?
It was the Eagle, 101.5, the Eagle. And again, to choose us over the powerhouse stations, the big ones, was crazy. So they set up all their cameras that morning. I remembered like gaggles and gaggles of girls all around our windows right there at Trolley, down by Trolley Station or Trolley Square.
Yeah, me and my friends. Great.
Okay, yeah, you guys. Just like
my friends were there. I couldn't get off work that day, but I know what you're talking about exactly. This is a fine time in my 18-year-old brain that you were talking about here. That time in Utah around David Archuleta time.
It was like Ed Sullivan's theater with the Beatles in there. It was like nuts. I couldn't believe it. So I'll never forget. I always remember walking down the hall with David and welcoming into the studio with the cameras following us and like all the big lights of television. And so I had a friend after that who called me once he realized David was in town and had visited the station. Said, "Hey, I have." He was very high up in the church. I suppose he still is. I'm gonna be in the box with President Monson tonight. And I was like, okay. He said, do you want to bring David tonight to meet President Monson? And I thought, sure, let me talk with David about it while he's here at the station. So literally that morning, I remember David, had to go to the bathroom, and we talked for a second in front of the mirror in the bathroom because he, there's just so many people outside the hallway. It's like, I got to talk to you about this real quick. Do you want to do this or not? Go visit President Monson and tonight. I'm like, I know it sounds weird. It's weird for me to even be asking you, but if you want to, I can make this happen with my friend who's tied in. And sure enough, we went that night and met President Monson, and President Monson with those gigantic hands. I remember them being just like so soft and like fat, and he was so nice, and of course to us, and we had a great conversation, talked about missions, if David was going to go on a mission, and he asked me about my mission, and all these things that I guess prophets probably ask people. So it was great. It was a great experience, and I think one of those that I'll always treasure. But yeah, it was the peak of both things, of the Salt Lake experience with the radio station, certainly the biggest they had ever seen, biggest moment, and then sort of a spiritual peak as well in some ways, in the sense that we got to kind of go and hang with the prophet, which who does that? So at a Utah Jazz basketball game, by the way, in a box, that was just nuts.
Monson loved the Jazz. It was kind of a well-known secret that President Monson experienced dementia towards the end of his life. Was there any indication of that you remember when you met him? Or
no? This would have been 2008, like you said, and so he seemed pretty sharp.
Okay, yeah. And then David Archuleta had not come out yet as being a member of the LGBTQ community. Did you wonder about that? Did you guys ever discuss that? Was that ever like something that would have even been a thing?
No, we didn't discuss it. And I knew, he lives in Nashville now.
Yeah.
He came off his mission, and I think he may have moved to Nashville shortly after that. And I know I've had a few LDS gay friends in Nashville say, well, David doesn't really date or doesn't date girls or whatever. He's like doing his thing and music and whatever. And, there's some people like that who are like asexual or whatever. And I kind of thought maybe that was just the case. So, I'm happy to see that he processed all of it and actually was willing to say it, and come out. And even though it was a little bit confusing, I think, what he said, but even confusion is okay. If you can admit, I'm trying to figure this out, I think that's a very positive, good step. But I never had any inclination that was the case. And there's several times in the book where I talk about that, where I've met people, and then later to find out for whatever reason they are part of the LGBTQ world, and come out later in life. But we met earlier.
Yeah. So I imagine as your marriage is progressing and you're raising these kids and you're realizing, talk to us about like when you started thinking or realizing that you were either curious or needed to explore, or you were starting to see the writing on the wall, or you were kind of tap out. Like, talk to us about that progression towards eventually deciding you needed to look into other possibilities because the marriage thing wasn't probably going to work long term.
Yeah. Well, after we moved from Salt Lake to Nashville, we really all committed. I recommitted to, because I'd already, while I was in Nashville, been living sort of this weird single life. I would kind of go back and forth to Salt Lake and see everybody. You
got a big opportunity. Maybe just talk briefly about what took you to Nashville.
Yeah, absolutely. CMT brought me there. Obviously, to work for CMT is a pinnacle sort of career.
Tell listeners who that is. The ones who don't know.
Country Music Television.
Yeah.
It's a TV channel on cable television, y'all. Don't cut the cord yet. We're still there. It's the prominent country music television source. And it certainly was in 2008 when I first got the call to perhaps go and work for them. And so obviously I had to wrestle with, my family was living in Salt Lake. Do I want to be in Nashville? Can I make it work? So I went through all those questions. I analyzed all those things from different angles and finally decided I absolutely needed to be in Nashville. And this was where I needed to be next. Teresa was super supportive, as were our kids. Eventually, they all moved there as well. And I sort of recommitted with that move that I was going to be absolutely committed to the church and once again get back to who I needed to be, because I felt like I'd kind of left all that for at least a time when I was in Nashville without family, and I hated that. So
you mentioned kind of like, I mean, the one thing that really comes out in all the interviews I do with LGBTQ Mormons is like, you don't ever have a chance as a teen to just kind of like figure out who you are and explore and date. And so you talk in the book about this time where you're kind of commuting to Nashville, your family's back here.
Yeah.
And it's not like you're playing the field or anything, but do you want to talk about that? Starting to allow yourself to kind of like, at least ask the question and maybe even make some friends.
I was really curious. And again, you had described it perfectly. When you grow up and you're gay, there's not a whole lot of opportunity to like figure yourself out through real experiences. So I wanted to talk to people. So yeah, I did meet and talk to gay people because I thought, man, I want to hear your story. I was like John DeLynn then, though. I was like, tell me how you got here.
Like an interviewer?
Yeah, like tell me how you got to the point where you are out and you feel good about it. Like, and at what age did you feel this way? And do you think anything happened in your family that made you this way? Because I was curious about all those things in my own life. And then, obviously the more I heard those stories, the more I realized it was so many people just felt it's my wiring. It's the way I am. And they couldn't pinpoint anything in their childhood that would have made them this way. So I started reading a lot. I went back to as much science as I could find, data, like real actual truth and data from experiences people have shared on the internet. And I read all those things from every, medical source possible. So at that time, I also, like I said, I was chatting with other people, trying to figure it out. And I think that was really helpful. It was really helpful because then I realized, like, okay, there are people like me. I've got a tribe here. I don't have to. I'm not alone in this feeling, and that's sort of good. That was very good at the time.
Yeah. Okay, so that takes you to the point where you start realizing you're going to have to make some big changes.
Mm.
And that's, I talked to you about this a bit. We haven't even really talked about the country scene, and I want to get to that. But like, there's being Mormon, and then there's coming out to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's coming out to your your wife and kids.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's coming out to the church and to your family. And then there's doing this as a TV and radio celebrity in an industry that probably doesn't have at least a historical reputation in the past of being super LGBTQ friendly. So like, I can't imagine the pressure because it's so hard. It was so much effort to build your career.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine the pressure you felt.
Yeah.
And how you navigated.
There was a lot of pressure. I called friends to help me often. And many straight friends, people in the church even, because I started sort of just revealing myself to more people and talking about it because I knew I had to. I had to turn to people and find guidance and counsel because I knew I was coming to a point where I was just so unhappy, not being able to be happy. And again, with all the weight of all those decisions to all those people around me and all the work that I also felt like, oh my gosh, I could be risking with any of this. And so there was a huge fear at the time, but I also felt like with every conversation, I got a little closer to being happier. It felt like I was venting a little more. And even with Teresa at this point, obviously we had a first conversation I talk about in the book because I want people to know like the process. It happened many years before I came out. to the world. But I needed to start with her. And after that, I started opening myself up to more people and chatting more often to kind of understand who I was. So,
real quick, just because I want to really spotlight this. You've got a wife you love, you've got kids you love, you've got a successful family, and now your career is super successful. Some would say, like, well, you've got it all. Like, okay, this is an inconvenient thing, but like, there's so much going for you. Why even risk it?
Right.
I think that probably shows how dark it must have gotten for you, that you could have everything else almost perfect in your life, but it still was tearing you apart inside. Can you talk about that moment where you're just like, I can't keep doing this, even though everything else seemed to be perfect?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think that I actually carry that guilt around with me that you just described. I've got it all. What's wrong with you? Why would you even want to mess this up or rock the boat? And I thought I thought to myself then, I'm being selfish. Like, this is just for you. Stop it. I did see a therapist, which helped a lot because I started loading some of the shame and the guilt that I just described. And it helped to have someone to bounce things off of who's unbiased and who could also sort of guide me and introduce me to things that I had not thought about before. Like, for most of my life, it was so black and white to me. Everything was one way or the other. And we're sort of taught that way in the church too. Like, it's just this or that. And when you realize, like, there's a myriad of colors in between the black and the white, and a spectrum for sexuality, but also just decisions in general, that it's not always as clear as you may think. Once I started opening my mind up to sort of concepts like that, I realized that that I could talk about it more and then start sort of peeling back the onion to get to the core of who I was. And that's what I started doing. And there was a darkness in that time because I was scared of it. Again, shameful, guilty, and scared that I might be messing up my kids, messing up my family, and all the things that I really love about my life. Then I started thinking about Teresa and how I'm going to mess her up eventually too with this.
Yeah, there's what if you stayed? I'm sure you wondered that. What if I just...
Yeah, exactly. I thought, and my kids, when they do see me, I'm a grumpy guy. I'm not a happy guy at home sometimes. They see that. They see me not real happy going to church. So I asked myself, what is it that I'm doing wrong? And I prayed during that time too. Like, what can I do to change this? And it occurred to me very clearly, what's the one thing you haven't fixed? That's the one thing you haven't fixed ever. Your core, who you are. And so at that after that sort of epiphany, I started trying to fix, again, peeling back the onion slowly, trying to fix that and get to what my core was, because I knew it needed to be made right.
And you were talking about Teresa too, like what it would be like for her if you were to try to stay in.
Yeah, what would that be like? She's living a fraud then too. And she knows it. And so, she deserves the best. She deserves to be happy. She deserves a husband who is 110%. And
into her, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In all the ways.
In all the ways.
Yeah.
Right. So, I really agonized over that, and somewhat even to this day, that it took me so long, but I was trying to do the right thing for the family, and I was trying to wait till the right moment in time. And I needed to get myself right over that time as well. So, eventually, it started feeling better as we talked more, Teresa and I, and then eventually as I revealed myself to my mom, who I did not talk to her over the phone. She lives in South Carolina. I was in Nashville and super busy. So I decided I was going to write her an email to tell her how I felt and who I was. I just didn't want to get on the phone and just bawl. So I wrote her a really poignant email, and I share that in the book as well. I hope it'll help people to know what to say or how to write it, or how that might sound if you ever have to do that. And I called her. I said, "Hey, are you by your email? Because I'm going to send you something very important." And then just read it and then call me right back. That was the way I needed to deal with that with her. And so we worked through it, and eventually told my dad, all the people in your life who are important. Eventually told my kids, and they accepted with a lot more love and compassion than I would have ever imagined. And so, yeah, we just unraveled it slowly over a process of time. And I tell people in the book, it's a evolution, not a revolution. It's something I evolved to and eventually figured out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things we haven't talked about is just how kind of like, there are people that just aren't into the country music scene at all. And so for them, they might be oblivious to all this, but like my family and I, we just started watching The Voice this year. For example, I just discovered Blake Shelton this year. I wouldn't have known who he was,
Right.
but like now I totally am into The Voice, and I love Blake's personality. And so I start going onto YouTube to see all the people you've interviewed. And it's like Dolly Parton, it's, Taylor Swift, you knew her, and Blake Shelton. And you can see just all the biggest names, George Strait, Garth Brooks, like you have met them all. You know all these people.
Crazy.
So I want to give people a sense for just, this is probably hard, just how incredibly, like you've won country music awards, like lots of broadcasting awards. You're a big deal. And that's why one of the many reasons why I was so honored you'd come on the show. Talk a bit about, as you ascend into your career, just all the people that you've gotten to know and what it's like. And then I want to talk about how many of those people came to your support and what that was like.
Yeah. I've been very, lucky because, particularly at CMT, you're inundated with interviews constantly. There's always someone coming by the studio to talk. And I was a pretty good interviewer before I got to CMT, but I really had to like dig in and get great at it because it was such a big spotlight and such a huge opportunity. So I did meet all, these heroes of mine from my childhood, like Dolly, for example, who is larger than life. She's just as funny in person as she is on TV. That exact same person you've seen in movies and you hear in music. I mean, she's the genuine article, and such a great person. You just love being around her. And so you have moments like that with her, and then Taylor, who I got to know very early in her career.
I love the crockpot story.
Oh yeah,
it's very Mormon, by the way.
It is. Long before she was a huge superstar. But she was already gaining traction in Nashville, for a few years. And so we were friends. So she's one of those people that makes you feel at least like she is your friend. She comes in, knows your name, wants to give you a hug. Let's talk about life. Let's dig in. And so she had mentioned that she got a new condo, and she was living on I think it was the highest floor of the complex. She's like, it's so lonely when I go home at night because the lights are off when I come in the door. And I'm like, well, what can I do to make Taylor feel better? So the next interview, I brought her a crock pot because I thought everyone deserves an 8-quart oval, and I anything to sort of make it feel like it was her home, and so that became sort of a tradition. Blake, your friend Blake, who by the way is about as tall as you are, John.
Is he big?
You surprised me by your height today because I didn't know what to expect, but yeah, he's a tall guy, and
You guys have a really cool rapport. He kind of ribs you a little bit.
Yeah. There's always a little bit of like fun tension between us. And he's willing to just say anything. You don't ever know what he's going to say. And that's the fun of it. And I don't think he ever knows. He doesn't know what the questions I'm going to ask. And I always try to get him, the questions that'll poke the bear a little bit and get answers that'll be kind of fun out of him. But he said to me one time after giving Taylor the crock pot, he's like, I can't believe you gave the biggest international superstar in the world, a crockpot. And she seemed like she loved that crockpot. And it's so true. And she was like so enthusiastic about receiving it. But yeah, there are a lot of these little country music stories and adventures and behind the scenes things that I share in the book that, I see because the mic's not on or the cameras are off. I wanted it to sort of be a little bit of a VIP pass into what I've seen over the years with so many stars, from Blake to Taylor to Garth, Carrie Underwood, Dierks Bentley, all these people, Dan and Shay, Miranda Lambert story. So
they're all in the book.
Yeah, and
they're all in the book.
Yes.
Here's the thing.
Thanks for the plug. But you're right. When I came out in 2017, because of years and years of knowing these people, I thought people.
I guess Toby Keith. We didn't mention him, right?
Toby Keith is yeah. I didn't know how people would react. Again, there's this fear. I don't care how comfortable you feel with yourself about it at that point, because you got to feel comfortable about coming out if you're going to announce it to the world. And I felt pretty good about just letting it off my chest. It was almost a selfish thing. Like, let me just get this out. Let me just say it and be done. And then to have that love come back in waves from the stars you've interviewed over the years, from Carrie to Carrie Underwood to Toby Keith and Dierks and Dan and Shay and Casey Musgraves. All these people sort of spoke up that day.
They're like tweeting their support, right?
Yes, they were all like, "We love you, Cody," hearts, or thumbs up. From I think Toby, who said, "Cody, I'm paraphrasing, but I think he said, 'Cody, I admire your courage today.'" And I thought, okay, here's alpha male, straight, seemingly sort of conservative in so many ways, and yet he's saying nice things about me coming out. Boy, that's powerful. If you're a fan of country music, you're some kid living on a dirt road thinking you're not like anyone else, you're different, you feel like you're somewhere in the LGBTQ plus world, and you hear Toby Keith say that about a media figure, that's something else. And I hope it means something to people like that, because again, I never had that. I thought I knew I was different, but I thought there was no one else around me like me. So again, different generations, we see it more. There's a lot more love and acceptance in the world today, but there's still a lot of fear around speaking up and telling people that you're gay. And I hope in some ways that message was sent that day, that, hey, it's okay. You're loved. You can love country music and be gay.
I want to come back to that part about country music, but there's this powerful part in the book that we texted about, where years earlier, Ellen comes out, and you kind of feel pressure to kind of comment on that. Do you feel like telling that story a little bit?
Yeah,
and then we'll flash forward to your own coming out.
It's a great story because this shows you how insecure and naive and sort of green I was living in Texas doing morning radio. It was me and my co-host, who was a brilliant broadcaster, super smart gal. Her name was Stacy Brooks. I was intimidated a little bit by her because I never felt like we were equal. Like, she's always a step ahead of me, but she did her best to make me look good. And I loved her for that. And we're friends to this day, very close friends.
Does that sound familiar, John?
Absolutely. Tracking.
Yeah. never you're equal. But nonetheless, the Ellen story was huge when she was on the cover, I think, of Time or one of the magazines. And of course, on her show saying I'm gay. It was a gigantic thing. Now it seems so like, okay, so what? But at the time it was big. And so it was a huge media story. And because our show was versed in pop culture, we had to talk about the pop culture events, the things that were going on in the world. So the day before we had this broadcast on the morning show to talk about Ellen, we met with the executives of the radio station, who basically said, hey, we want to make sure that we balance this out, that there's one side, both sides are being represented. That's all we need, which is completely, I think, fair-minded in their minds. But that meant that my co-host Stacy was going to go for the pro Ellen. It's all good. She should be speaking up. She needs to say this. The world needs more love. And then I had to be the antagonist in the sense that I had to then say, no, be careful about this. It's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, or something like that. And I was just, I couldn't even get the words really out of my mouth without feeling icky, because here I am sort of just totally faking it, faking that moment. I was such a fraud, and I felt terrible. And yet I was trying to do my job and make everybody happy and make the executives happy that we were doing a balanced approach. So it was a very difficult moment for me, honestly. I look back on it and I squirm a little bit and cringe at what I said, because I knew then that it was not right. It wasn't who I was, and yet I was playing a character, essentially.
That's hard.
Really hard.
That's hard.
Yeah. Fast forward though, I did meet Ellen later.
Yeah, tell that. Yeah.
So I did meet her.
And she heard the comment, or
no? She had no idea. But I mean, yeah, I'm sure at that time there were many people who were, again, anti-Ellen, who were speaking about it on talk radio and on morning shows. It was another time, and it was a little more allowed, I think, back then to be anti-gay in some ways, and unfortunately, so she really did catch a lot of wrath, I think, back then. Nonetheless, when I met her, I guess in 2018 or 19, it was in Santa Barbara. We were doing a wildfire rescue benefit after the wildfires sort of ravaged that area. Ellen was there. I was there with Brad Paisley, who was also performing with Ellen, and I had the chance to go out and introduce them. But before I went out, Ellen was like backstage, and I was like, you know what? And I was out by now. This is past 2017, so I would have been out and proud. And I was like, I'm going to go tell Ellen how I feel. Like, I want to meet her, and I'm not going to miss this moment, because this is the only time it's ever going to happen. So, and Ellen's a little hard to get to. She's got people around her, but I'm like, I'm just going to walk up. So she had a Modelo beer in her hand, and I don't even drink beer, but I got a Modelo beer, and I was like, I'll just go say cheers to Ellen. So sure enough, I walked over to her and said hi, and I said, I do country music television, and I just want you to know how much I appreciate you. And paraphrasing, of course, it was something along the lines of you've made lives better for a lot of people. I know you hear it all the time, but I want you to hear it from me. And then at the end of the conversation, we spent a few minutes together, and she was really kind, very sweet. At the end of the conversation, I said, "Oh, and I'm gay," to her, and she goes, huh, "Me too." Like, it was just a great comedic moment, and exactly how you wanted it to sort of like end. But it was a great meeting, and that picture is somewhere on Instagram.
That's fun. So I've been more classic rock kind of pop guy, and so, but my parents were really are really into country and country music awards and all that. But I don't know that I have had a fair perception ever, and you can't ever really group any people and kind of characterize people as a group, because there's always individuals in a group. But I would think of all the different industries, entertainment industries or genres that one might come out in, that my stereotype of the country scene would be that might be the most risky to come out in. So can you talk a little bit about kind of the like the context prior to you coming out? Had there ever been a country star who had either come out or had been closeted? There's a perception that kind of like country music represents Southern conservative Christian values, quote, family values. And so, like, just how scary and or risky was it? Were there any trailblazers within the country scene that were LGBTQ? And then what did what type of environment was it that you came out in, and how risky was it?
Yeah. You're right. All those perceptions, I think, are correct. And there is a lot more conservative, traditional thoughts, I think, still in country music. So 2017, before that, there were a couple of country artists who came out. One was Shelley Wright, who wrote a book and appeared on Oprah, I believe, in 2010. In 2013, I want to say, Ty Herndon also came out. He was sort of the first male country artist to speak up.
Do you have a sense for how that was for their careers?
Well, here's the thing. Oh, sorry.
Show the book.
Show the book. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. I love both those people. I don't want to sound like I'm at all. They are trailblazers. Both of their careers, by the time they came out, had faded somewhat. They had their hits, and so there wasn't there's definitely always risk. It wasn't the kind of risk that one might have if they were making a hit that was on the chart today.
Mm-hmm.
And I think by the time they came out, it was past. That said, they now have great careers because they're able to go back and sing all those classic songs, and they're able to fill up venues where LGBTQ people want to be too. So it's actually, I think, helped them blossom. But for me in 2017, there weren't a lot of faces who were making current country music who were out. We've had Casey Musgraves sing Follow Your Arrow, which is definitely a pro-gay LGBTQ song. We had Shane McAnally, who helped co-write the song. He's a out songwriter. So again, just giving you a few tidbits of the times, the things that were hot points that were happening at the moment. But really, there wasn't anyone on the current scene who had stepped up. And so, yeah, it was risky. It was risky because I am a guy who's seen on television sets every week. I am a guy who people hear every single day on the radio if they listen. And so would they like me? Would they hate me? Would it be 50-50? Would I then become like a polarizing figure? Even though I've always been this kind of like all in, everyone's welcome, have fun. Let's ask some great questions. Let's have a little bit of a party while you're here. A welcoming human. Would they then think I'm not that or change their perception about me? So yeah, there was that definite risk involved. And I was scared of that. So I went back to the 50-50 thing because I thought it would be like 50% of people won't like me and 50% maybe like me more. It turned out to be just like a 90-10. I mean, of people just overwhelmingly showing support and compassion and love. And of course, there's haters with everything you do. And there certainly were haters, but for the most part, people were very, very accepting. I go to country concerts all the time, or at least pre-pandemic I did. And we go to festivals, and often people will come up and say something about all this to me. Thank you for coming out. I love country music. I'm gay. Love you. Something along those lines. TJ Osborne is the one half of the group Brothers Osborne. Just won a CMA last week for Vocal Duo of the Year. One in the past, Grammy winners. I mean, they're incredible country musicians. So TJ decided he would come out this past January in Time Magazine, and he had a huge article written about him and his reasoning behind all of it. And it was incredible because he is a guy currently on the scene, making music that charts, selling millions of albums, streaming, bazillions of songs. So that was really the first big major artist to say I'm gay, and that was a big moment. Now there's a sort of inclusion happening all across a wave that you're starting to see. We've got great lesbian artists like Lily Rose or Brooke Eden who are trying to find their way. The interesting thing about them is that they are out first, and then they're going to give you their song. Other way around, it was like, oh, let me make a hit first, and then I'll tell you about myself.
Mm-hmm.
They're actually wearing who they are every day as part of who they are, trying to sell you on a record, sell you on a song. So it's a whole different approach. And it's really exciting because that means we've made some progress. Yeah.
And country entertainment scene is so influential. Let's just say it to the southern states, and they have as many, LGBT kids percentage wise as any other state. So I don't think it can be overemphasized how influential popular culture is in helping kids see themselves and others,
right?
In helping to promote visibility. I just can't overstate how much I respect what you and others have done.
Hey, thanks. And the folks at GLAAD and many other outreach groups have stepped up because they see this as being a issue or challenge to reach out to southern states specifically and say, and start campaigns and make sure to influence for positive to the kids who may be LGBTQ there or frankly in Utah as well. I mean, there's been great campaigns started here to emphasize love and acceptance, and I think it's a really wonderful thing.
I love it.
Yeah.
So let's switch back to the Mormon question now. So let's talk about the unraveling of your faith in the final stages of it, and then your decision to leave the church and what led to it. You talk about moving to Nashville in the book and like making one last ditch effort. You mentioned again, reading Miracle Forgiveness by Spencer W. Kimball, reading In Quiet Desperation by Ty Mansfield, trying to pray the gay away and all that.
Yep. And talk to my bishop. Talk to my bishop.
Yeah. Talk about the final efforts you made to make it work as a Mormon. And then what were the really important factors that made you decide to let it go?
Well, I started, I was still super involved. The bishop brought me in to teach gospel doctrine. And I thought, okay, either he's not inspired or something is going on here that God somehow wants me to teach gospel doctrine when he knows all this about me. And by then I had already, obviously I had to talk with Teresa, and we were, in that stage I spoke about a moment ago where we're reading and researching and trying to just figure it out, but we're still kind of going to church and teaching our kids. And I said, I need to think about this to him. And then I thought about it, prayed about it. And I said, I just need to tell you something though. I'm gay. I sat him down and I said, I have I know you guys call it same-sex attraction or whatever, but I've known this about myself my whole life. This is who I am. And I struggle with it. I don't know what to do about it. But here I am. He didn't offer a whole lot of guidance, really. I feel sorry for bishops. I feel sorry for these guys who have to sit across a desk and hear these things without much experience when it comes to counseling people. They just sort of like have to say something. What do you say? He didn't have any answers really, other than pray about it, ponder, read the scriptures. Are you reading the scriptures every day? This sort of thing. And so that was a tipping point, I think. That sort of like was, okay, this is not gonna. I did teach gospel doctrine, by the way, for like 2 weeks. And then I went back and said, I can't, this is not for me. I just don't feel comfortable anymore telling people things that I don't know if I believe anymore, because I know who I am. I know I'm different. And by then I also had started to understand a little more about the gospel and its many cracks.
What were the biggest cracks for you? If you had to list like 3 to 5 or 7, like what are the big ones?
We talked about the polygamy. To me, that was always unsettling. Blacks in the priesthood. That was always really hard for me to understand.
That the church kept priesthood
from African Americans till 1978.
Yeah.
That was tough for me on my mission as well. I struggled with that big time. And then I started to hear more about like the Pearl of Great Price and like all of the crazy claims that the church has in regards to that document, and certainly the Book of Mormon too, and just the lack of there being any evidence of truth to them, and all the discrepancies that exist. So yeah, I started to like hear some of that. It may have been about the time I discovered you, John, and I found great comfort in some of that as well, even though it's a little bit of destroying your faith that you've believed in for so long. It was like, okay, yeah, I was getting to the point where I knew who I was. And I knew that God hadn't messed me up, and the teaching of the church that said that you were a mistake or you're imperfect or you need to come to church, but don't do anything about it. That whole idea was crazy to me at that point. And then I think 2015 with the that new, whatever you call that, was it
the November 2015 policy where the
exactly
church basically declares same-sex marriage an act of apostasy and tells children of same-sex couples that they're not welcome in any of the major ordinances of the church, including baptism and priesthood and confirmation. That exclusion policy.
Yeah. Exclusion policy is a good way to put it. And I thought about my son, honestly, and we talked about it, he and I, about that time, because by then I had talked to him about myself. And I said, what does that mean to you that suddenly you can't serve in the priesthood, right? That's what it said. And you can't go on a mission. You don't have a choice anymore with those things because I'm your dad. What in the world? Are you kidding me? You should be able to choose for yourself because you're a individual. And yet the church is going to keep you from doing those things. And then I think we all decide at that point, like, is this a church we really want to be in that would exclude like that in such a hateful way? And of course, that whole policy was rebuked and taken back or whatever.
That didn't fix it for you.
No, it didn't fix it for me. And then I thought, well, what? These guys are supposed to be inspired, right? And, a prophet and 12 apostles who aren't they supposed to be in touch with this? Why would they do one thing and then, within a short period of time, just take it back? Like, that doesn't seem correct. And so that piles on with all the other revelations that seem a little bit out of whack with truth, including the priesthood and polygamy and beyond. So by that point, it was really sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will, for me. I think for Teresa to some degree, and for the kids as well. It's like, okay, we're good. We got love here. We're living as Christ-like as anyone else we know in the church. And so we can keep being great people and good people and move forward together with love. And that's what we decided to do in a very deliberate and intentional way. Let's love each other through all of this. We're always going to be a family. Nobody can take that away. And so we decided then that we were going to be together family, but one that looked a little bit different than everyone else's family. So, yeah.
I love this. And this book was really moving to me in so many parts, but I underlined a few areas that I really wanted you to read just as we're kind of wrapping up here, both to let people know how important this book is, but also you write so beautifully and thoughtfully.
Thanks.
This is some emotional stuff, but there's a section in your book on page 108, 109 called The End of the Line. And it's about the journey within, because so often you talked about basically trying to run from who you are and not listening to who you are. And I think one of the major themes in your book is learning to quiet down and listen to who you are. Yeah. So I'm gonna hand this book to you, and if you're comfortable, have you read maybe a few passages.
Sure.
There's a couple others after this, but read what you're comfortable there. I've outlined a little bit of it, but
I may break down. I did the audiobook for this as well. I read every single page into a microphone in a small studio in Nashville, and we had to stop so many times because often I would get so emotional reading these passages, even the happy ones. It's your life on paper, and you are reliving it as you're reading it. So,
the audiobook is great. That's how I consume this book.
Is that right? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, anyway, I'll read this to you here. It's called End of the Line, like you said on page 108. As brief as it was, I'm glad we had that time as a family in Utah. It gave us all a chance to immerse ourselves in the Mormon faith and take it as far as it could go. It gave my kids an opportunity to fully understand the religion they were being raised in and take them through their spiritual roots. In some ways, the experience helped them all to grow. No, not the move didn't fix me. But sometimes you have to take the road all the way to the end before you can redraw the map of your life. I was making the point there that moving to Utah, I thought would be some sort of fix. Like I would be so engrossed in Mormonism that I would feel better about everything that I was doing. And of course, it didn't work that way, that we had to take the road all the way to the end and sort of redraw the map afterwards. Once again, I found myself leaving that life behind from the outside in, seeming ideal. Leave that life behind from the outside in seemed ideal. In Salt Lake City, I had faith, family, and career all tied up in a bow. It was my last ditch effort to get it right. Instead of dialing into my inner authentic self, I drowned out that voice with the heavenly noise of church life and the heart of Mormonism, surrounded by the community that shared my faith. I had hoped I could finally put an end to all those urges. It took listening to everything but my own voice as far as it could go. I tried turning to God. Maybe he would speak to me and tell me what to do. Some religions have a third eye, but I think of hearing messages from your maker as more like having a third ear. When I allowed myself to be still enough, I would occasionally pick up on a few of those signs. But mostly the path that I'd been on was long and circuitous and a detour that only brought me back to myself and at a point that I wasn't ready to hear what he had to say. I'd already reached the end of the line. And by the way, I say he there, and I put it in quotation marks because, God is much bigger than he, and it doesn't, I don't, I've been very careful lately to make sure the pronouns of God aren't said. I don't know that I know, or any of us know exactly what those pronouns are. I'd rather just say God most of the time. That's why I put it in quotes. I go on to say, you can never drown out that inner voice, no matter how much you try. The harder and longer you try to shift the focus away from your true desires and your authentic self, the louder that voice in your head will eventually scream. Meanwhile, you'll live a life in denial and make all kinds of decisions that cut you off from the road to happiness. You may think you've got everyone fooled, but deep down, they know something is missing. And there's a breakdown in communications with the people you hold most dear. You're too busy just reaching and reacting to situations, listening to outside sources, and following your fears. You may not even know while you're unhappy, but there's always a reason. I don't regret embracing my religion and doing what I could to hear God and do what I thought he was calling me to do. But that call from Brian Phillips, who hired me in Nashville, was some other kind of divine intervention that pulled me off that path. Ultimately, that path was the wrong one for me. But you got to live those chapters, That's what I was kind of pointing out, is that for me, I had to get there. And it didn't happen quick. And I think that's life. You got to listen to what your heart's saying in the moment you're in. And then go back and you realize in retrospect, okay, there was things that were good about that experience, and there's a reason why it took me so long to figure that out. And that's okay. Giving yourself permission to be okay in that, difficult time.
Thank you for reading that.
Sorry, I'm a little bumpy. I'm wearing glasses, and I can't I can't see very well.
No, I love it. Later you talk about God. One of the things that I think is that I love about your story, so many people who leave Mormonism, for some reason, Mormonism ruins a lot of people forever believing in God or Jesus again. And I think we talked a little bit about this when I was on my ladder, cleaning my gutters, making all that noise.
Yes.
That first time we talked on the phone.
Right.
That's not been your path, to lose all faith. Am I right about that?
You're right. I think it has just been a different sort of approach for me. I just realize it's more about spirituality over religion, certainly, but also that there's some valuable things that come from prayer and meditation and quiet moments. Still small voice, I feel like, still speaks to me. It's intuition. It's your own sort of personal North Star. And I think that exists. I do think you can lean into that and find answers. And so that's been I don't want to lose that part of me. It's been good to me over the years. And that's what I wanted people to hear, is that listening to that heart, that gut, that intuition is so important. And it is a spiritual thing. It's okay to call it spiritual, I think, right?
There's a part in your book. Is it Quiet Assurance? Is that the title?
I think so, yeah.
If it's okay, this is so beautiful. I'm just going to read that as well, if you don't mind.
And I also quote a lot of country songs in this.
Yeah, I love that.
I go back and try to, so many great lyrics in country songs, and so many lyrics about God in country songs, and about life. Obviously, the greatest country songs are all about life. And so I try to bring them into all this, and particularly the ones that related to me directly at the time, like this chapter. I start with Garth Brooks' Unanswered Prayers. It has some lines in it that resonate with me. I write, he says, "Remember when you're talking to the man upstairs, that just because he doesn't answer doesn't mean he don't care." Powerful, right? Well, I go on to write, the song is about a guy who bumps into his high school sweetheart while he's at a hometown football game. He's with his wife as he stares at the woman from his past, remembering that the time he asked God to make her mine. Then he realizes God didn't answer that prayer to make her mine because it would have made him miserable. The girl he loved in high school wasn't the angel he thought she was. God knew better. I had asked God to change what could not be changed and believed he could not or would not hear me. But all along, he was quietly allowing me to come into my own truth. The answer didn't come in a flash or an epiphany. It wasn't like the scenes I'd imagined when I was a kid listening to my mother describe the rapture. The voice of God wasn't booming, deep, or resonant, as is Morgan Freeman's portrayals. It was more like knowing or feeling. It was more like a knowing or feeling that strengthened my resolve. It was a gradual realization that I was still the same good person growing up, serving a mission, caring for my family. I was righteous and worthy. By virtue of digging within and hearing that voice, I was able to wipe away all the past shame and draw closer to God. That was his way of speaking to me. We tend to put our human expectations on what we want God to be. But my way of finding peace was to let go of those expectations and just be.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's yeah, I go on, I think somewhere in that chapter perhaps to talk about just how we're taught incorrectly that God is a dude on a planet with a white robe on and gray hair and making up rules for people down here on earth, and how small that is, how small that diminishes God to be. I just think careful. I just think God is much bigger than that.
Yeah.
And once you realize that, he's still great and big, it makes it a whole lot easier for you to pray and to think things can come to you, because it's that kind of power that you're drawing on. Yeah. So that's kind of where I leave that.
I love it. Was it hard? I guess you didn't have pioneer ancestry on both sides of your line. So I imagine, and your wife, maybe she was never fully bought in, possibly, Teresa, and your kids. So maybe it wasn't as hard for you to leave as it is for kind of pioneer
I don't think
stock.
it was. They had for me, it was.
Was it relief? Was it a relief?
Yeah. Yeah. It was like, oh, again, all the things pile on. Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point. Small things lead to a big difference. All these things started piling up for me, and eventually the balance became a tipping point. Like, okay, yeah, this isn't right. This isn't for me. And it's not right for my family, who are going to be negatively treated from here on out based on the 2015 expulsion. I had lunch with the bishop at the time, different guy after the first story I told, but he had been my friend since I'd moved to Nashville. He became the bishop. Great dude. And he never wanted to really talk about it because it's uncomfortable. And I get it. We'd go out to lunch and have some sushi or whatever. And I always thought he's going to bring it up like any second now. We're going to really have a deep moment here. And it never got brought up. One day he texted me and said, I'm going to send you the letter from the stake presidency in regards to your disciplinary council. I'm crying now. I don't know why. At the moment, I didn't. I was like, okay, if a bunch of guys want to sit around a table and think that they can decide my future or where I belong in the celestial kingdom or whatever, that's their prerogative. I was so far gone from it at that point. I was okay. Like, I was moving on in a positive way that was making my life better and my family's life better. So, hated that, but in some ways it was like, whatever. So what? So what is how I felt. I know you've talked about your excommunication, and you've talked about, and many people have been on to talk about theirs, and how painful it was for them. I was embarrassed a little bit because I knew this bunch of guys was going to sit around a conference room in a church building and discuss me. Who knows what they even talked about? What do they even know? Like, what do they think they did? How do they even know anything? But it was sort of comical, honestly. So he wrote me afterwards, and after they went through all that and excommunicated, I suppose, and said there was nothing but love in the room, and everyone spoke so fondly of you, how much they loved you, and I'm not dead. Yeah, it was a very weird thing. I look back on that. I guess I should have gone, right?
So you didn't chose.
I didn't go. I
attend,
didn't.
Yeah.
I guess it would have been interesting to hear what they would have said or what they would have asked. What would you possibly have asked me? I don't know. So, how uncomfortable, how weird that is. It is weird.
That what?
Excommunication, disciplinary councils for people who are humans is equal as you are.
When you frame it as you're like trying to get well, trying to get right,
Yeah.
listening to your inner voice, getting healthy,
Yeah.
becoming a better person, and that's what you get excommunicated for. And it wasn't like you were like writing the CES letter and starting a
Right.
anti-Mormon podcast.
Right.
You're literally just living your life trying to get
Yeah.
healthy and happy, right?
Yeah, totally. And
that's an excommunicable offense,
right.
in 20 whatever.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
It was odd. It's odd. It's odd that I hope the church will come around to figuring out that that's not the best way to handle human beings. I was looking at this morning, I drove by the temple downtown, and they're reconstructing everything. It looks so different down there, Temple Square. If you haven't been down there yet, I mean, there's scaffolding up all the way to the top of the temple, and all around it, gigantic holes being built, I guess, for whatever underground things are going in there. I don't know enough about it, but I do know it seems like things are changing in the church. I do think, and I hope there'll be some changes that might be as drastic as whatever they're doing at Temple Square right now in regards to how they treat people.
Foundational changes, you mean?
Foundational.
Temple and otherwise.
It's almost symbolic, right? What they're doing at the temple is almost symbolic.
It is
of where
totally
the state
symbolic.
Of the church right now.
It's the first thought I had.
Yeah.
This is all messed up right here. This is all a mess, and it's got to be fixed. And it struck me as metaphorical. Yeah, I hated not to see a beautiful temple down there, honestly. Yeah. But I thought, boy, this is exactly how I kind of feel about the church right now. There's some scaffolding up. There's some repairs that need to be made.
One of our viewers, Pat, asks what you got excommunicated for specifically. Did the letter say? It can't be apostasy because you weren't speaking out publicly, which is what a lot of us have been excommunicated for. Did the letter say? Do you remember?
I honestly don't remember. I think it may have been apostasy. Could it have been?
Yeah. If you had a partner by then, sometimes like same-sex marriage is grounds for apostasy, but you're not married yet.
So that wouldn't have been the case.
Breaking the law of chastity.
I think it was after I came out. So they knew because I obviously was out on socials and I was with Trey, my current partner. And so we definitely posted photos. And so maybe they're
still making assumptions there. You could have been dating.
Right. That's what I mean. What question would you want to ask that? How uncomfortable would that meeting have been? Because it is so assuming. It's so assuming something's going on. You don't know what's happening. And why is it your business, by the way? It's all a little creepy to me now looking back on it. And it makes you wonder, like, why was I involved with such an organization that would do that to somebody, to myself? Yeah. It's all, kind of culty,
Yeah.
You're not following the rules. So we got to figure out something to do with you.
And I warn people that sometimes there's like this excitement. Oh, I'm going to get excommunicated. It's almost never fun.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's surprising how yucky it feels, but that's just what I experienced. For you, it sounds like it was like, hey, see you later.
It really was. I didn't think twice about it. And I was busy at the time. There were a lot of things going on in my life. I think the night that it happened, I was even traveling. So it's like, I can't be there for this. And why would I show up anyway? What to explain what to you? We've already sort of made some decisions that are clearly not in line with what you want. So it didn't bother me. It really didn't bother me.
Yeah, that's good. Well, for me, the most inspirational part of the book is to hear what your family is like today, including kind of the annual vacations you talk about. Do you want to talk about Teresa and
Yeah.
your partner and your children? And it almost seems like there's no such thing as happy ever after, but like for me, it represents the ideal aftermath of a Mormon mixed orientation marriage. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Like the happy ever after in quotes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
There's always challenges.
The happy ever after is an everyday journey. Obviously for everyone with marriage, with love, relationships, but certainly in this situation where you've got lots of challenges you faced and overcome and worked your way through. I do feel like we started, Teresa and I, when I told her the first time, I was like, about myself, that we sort of deliberately and intentionally said, hey, let's figure this out together. Let's work through it with love. We love our family so much. We love our kids so much. Let's make sure they know they're loved no matter what. And that, even the day that we talked about separating and getting a divorce, I remember just let's meet it all with love. Dad's not going anywhere. I'm still here. Mom's still here. We're still going to be a family forever. And you're right here with us. And nothing's going to change that will make you feel any less loved here. And so as hard as divorce is for any family, it was probably a little exacerbated because of this issue. But I think that my kids met it with great compassion, and they are a different generation that thinks a different way. And for them, it was like telling them that the color of my eyes is green because I'm gay. For them, it was like, this is the way it is. This is the way you came. And I told them exactly what I've told you, that I had to sort of unravel this over time. And I'm sorry I didn't tell you earlier, these sort of things, but they were incredibly kind and sweet and loved me. And again, I talk about those real conversations in the book as well, like how those went down and what the kids said. But in fact, after that, they got introduced to my partner now, Trey, and he's an amazing guy, and they have way more fun with him than they do with me, first of all. And they love him so much, and he's just sort of grafted into this family. And then Teresa's got her fella now, and of course, Michaela's had boyfriends, and Landon's had girlfriends, and Lawrence had a husband. So, all these things that, and we've all gotten together over holidays. Thanksgiving last year, we were all under one roof. And we invited their, I like to call it Island of Little Misfits, or whoever doesn't have a home for Thanksgiving, we always invite them over. And so we had some friends of mine come over who were gay, who didn't have a place to go on Thanksgiving. And so we were all just one happy family, blended and beautiful under one roof. Is it perfect? No. Do we have moments where we still have to, talk and work through something together that's a little bit different? Yes, but it is for the most part really, really good for them, for us, and it's very happy. Now it's a very happy family.
How are you doing? Do you feel qualitatively different now, being out and authentic and living your full, visible, authentic life? Does it feel different to you? Is it what you thought it might be, or even better?
Yeah, I think it's everything I thought and better. I think it's there are I'll be honest with you. There are moments still, because you're so indoctrinated for so long and you were such a part of the mindset that is the church, you still go, okay, I got to remind myself I'm on the right track here. You still have to go back to becoming you every day, realizing that it is, there are reasons why you made the decisions you did, and that reminder of there are no regrets. You have to think about, not that I would have done anything really different with this situation. It was what I was given. You're dealt the cards you are, and you have to play them in some way, shape, or form, and you decide. I decided I was going to play mine with absolute truth, with honesty, and with integrity, and that if I did it any other way, I was not going to be happy. And I felt what that was like. I knew what that would be like, that faking it. And I now feel like, yes, I'm at a really good spot because I feel like I don't second guess myself. I'm better at my job now than I was before because I'm just able to fully be me. Not that it really changes a whole lot of how I might approach an interview on the air or what question I might ask Luke Bryan, but ultimately, those artists know I am a little more honest with them because I'm myself and I'm out. And the audience itself knows that I am with them and I'm honest and out. And that human connection that maybe didn't exist before exists now. Something interesting happens whenever you show your vulnerabilities or perceive vulnerabilities, the things that you think people will walk away from you because they know. The truth is that they feel more bonded to you when they even know those vulnerabilities. And that's been the case with me over and over again. And many artists who aren't mentioned in the book have come up and said, thank you and love you and this sort of thing. I mentioned Luke Bryan. We can wrap on this if you want, but I saw him shortly after I came out in 2017. Was scheduled to go to his festival in Mexico. We're going to film there on the beach. Huge thing we do for CMT every single year. And Luke's a great guy he's from Georgia, Southern Georgia. And he talks like this, and he's just funny and awesome. And we've done so many things together over the years. But I remember him at that, and again, not on camera. This is all off camera. He's all very candid. He came over, and he's again super straight, alpha male, red state Georgian. Although maybe Georgia's a little more purple these days. But anyway, he came over and he said, he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, man, I'm proud of you. He said, how are you feeling right now? I bet you feel a whole lot better. And I said, absolutely. I do feel a whole lot better. Thank you. There's been a lot of that behind the scenes stuff that's just like, okay, I can do this. Keith Urban wrote the foreword of the book. And I tell the touching story of when I came out to him, really the first artist friend I came out to, and how it sort of confirmed for me that I was headed in the right direction when you give someone some big news that's very vulnerable and they respond with love and kindness, how meaningful that can be for the other person. That confirmation of you're on the right track and you can do this. Being you is what you need to do. So that's what I set out to do from really that moment on. Well, from the time I told Teresa also, I was going to work to be me, work to figure this out. And I'm just so grateful that eventually we did. She with my help, helping her and her mostly helping me. And then our kids, we just worked it out, man. Because at some point you got to live your truth, be who you are. And it's a beautiful thing.
Beautiful.
So thank you for sharing my story. It means a lot.
Oh, and wonderful. And the book is wonderful. Teresa's a bit of a star in the book to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
I had someone write me yesterday and say, I don't know Teresa, but I want to be Teresa when I grow up.
Yeah.
And I thought that's about right. She's a great person. So we're planning Thanksgiving next week and trying to figure out who's going to make what, green bean casserole and the whole
crockpot.
Thing. I don't know.
Stuffing in a crockpot?
Stuffing, maybe. When are you making a crockpot? Yeah. So we'll do
theater in town. I'm just kidding.
Turkey and brisket, maybe.
Yum.
Brisket on Thanksgiving. That sounds pretty good, right?
I love it.
I think her boyfriend's going to make that. So anyway,
Yum.
We're going to have a great time. And thanks for letting me share with people what family can look like and what we can be if we are civil to each other and more loving and kind to each other, because that's Teresa's example of that. She could have reacted in a very different way, as I think many spouses would, but that's not her character. That's not who she is. Nor did she think my character was different. She knew the guy she married, and she thought, okay, he's a good dude. I know his heart. Why would he make this up? Why would he bring this to me? It must be true. And we must have a challenge we got to figure out here.
Yeah.
So we met it with love and intention to figure it out together.
Beautiful. Thank you.
In the name of Jesus Christ.
Well, Carah, you play such an important role on Mormon Stories podcast these days. Any final thoughts or questions before we wrap up?
Just anyone who sits down in this chair and can do something so difficult like you did about leaving the church and coming out and being your true authentic self in the space that you work in, like that just kind of makes you a new hero of mine. So
Thank you.
you're just so articulate and so well spoken, and I'm just really impressed with you telling your story today. And it's a stab in my Mormon Stories heart that we could only talk for 2 hours today. It feels so unnatural, but
We covered a lot of
I know,
ground,
we
though.
covered a lot of ground. I still have more questions, but we'll talk afterwards. But this has been really, really,
Yeah.
really, really cool.
Are there any burning questions?
I do have one burning
questions?
question.
Like,
I do have one because I don't know if you saw Lena and Sal's episode that came out just a couple of weeks ago. They're a lesbian couple who are both
yes, I
married to.
loved them.
Wasn't that
I
incredible?
love their story.
And probably the biggest highlight of their episode was when they talked about what it was like to kiss for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
So-
yeah, good question.
So what was it like that when you were first able to experience romantic attraction to
Yeah.
somebody that you actually were attracted to and kiss a man?
It's so interesting, right? Because you hear about songs that sing about love your entire life, right?
On radio.
Already, yeah,
I gotta be half the songs, right?
totally, right?
Yeah.
Certainly in country music. And then movies, you see the movies and you see the romantic, kisses happening. You're like, man, Bradley Cooper, that looks pretty. That's a good kiss right there. Or Ryan Reynolds, who might be one of my hall passes. Yeah, you think, oh man, what must that be like? Because you live years and years and years of not doing it. So I can say that the first time or two, it still felt awkward to me, honestly, because I didn't know what I was doing. Then when I kissed Trey for the first time, who I'm with now, it was, it's like sparks. It's like all those things you think you're supposed to feel in the movies and in the songs comes to life, and it's special and it's wow. And yeah, it was a beautiful, awesome thing. Going so long and not having that and then having it, it's pretty great. So
That's beautiful.
yeah. What did
Sound-
they say, by the way? I don't know if I heard that.
There's a
part.
TikTok that I made that went pretty viral that did really well. And they were like, yeah, fireworks. And just that
Yes.
it finally, they said the exact same thing about music and movies made sense for the first time that they never understood
Right.
until it wasn't that they weren't married to amazing men, which they said that they were, that worked through them and their sex life and everything. But it wasn't until that they met each other
Mhm.
that the fireworks went off. And they're like, this is what it's supposed to be like.
Yeah.
I was just curious if you had that similar experience.
Yeah,
It sounds
definitely.
like you're with the person now that gave you those fireworks.
Yeah. At first you're like, you don't know what you're doing again. Like it seems like, oh gosh, is this how I do it with a dude? I don't know what to do now. So, but over time you learn that, okay, maybe that's not the right person for me. And then you sort of search out who is right. And I'm so grateful to find Trey and have those fireworks.
Hey.
He's got really good lips too. So that helps.
You got the beard. Does he have a beard too?
Only occasionally he'll grow it out a little bit every once in a while, but not like this. This is actually, I'm due for a groom, guys.
Well, I think you look very handsome from a straight woman to a gay man.
Okay, very good.
I
Thank
think you
you.
look fabulous.
I appreciate it. I think John looks fabulous myself.
Yeah, he wore his best country western.
Oh, he's
top
got,
for
is that
you.
your like pearl snaps and a vest?
I said he
over
looks
there?
like he owns a condo.
I'm
in
like,
Park City,
Carah, is it a
but
vest?
whatever.
Isn't that kind of country? I've got a
Not
little
the poopy
plaid going
ones.
on. Carah's like, you look like Park City, not country. And that shows how clueless I am. I need all the help I can get.
It is great to sit across from you and like hear your voice in person and to be a part of this. So thank you for that. And I don't want to leave early if there are any other questions you guys want to get to. So don't feel like you have any.
Oh, I have one more.
Okay.
So I'm gonna do the kind of Mormon wrap up of the way that we talk about Mormonism on this podcast. I want to make sure that it is fruitful and purposeful, and that we have somebody here who sounds like you did everything that you could to serve a mission, to pray the gay away. You read Miracle Forgiveness. You did everything that you're supposed to do, and it is just core to your identity and who you are. So if you have any advice to somebody who is gay in the church, who is going through that, struggling with their identity, maybe in the place you were 10 years ago, 20 years ago,
Right.
what advice do you have for a Mormon who might be part of the LGBTQ community? And then also, what changes would you like to see moving forward?
Mm.
Because we know that the church does change little by little. So it's a two-part
Gosh,
question.
that's a big question.
Hmm.
Wow. But a good one to close on. If in fact you want to close.
and broadcast.
Yeah, right.
Now I'll give you
And
time
live
to think
stream.
about it. I know it's a big one, and it's
It's a big one. I think you have to continue to listen and hear people learn. The main theme of the book is listening, which I learned from. I kind of came up with the theme of the book from Larry King, the great talk show host.
Love that guy.
Yeah, of course, passed away. Before he passed, I had a chance to interview him, and he said to me, "I never learned anything while I was talking." And I thought, wow, that's great. That is exactly how I feel as well. Shut up long enough to hear someone else, listen to what they have to say, and learn. And for me, I reached out to friends, I talked, and I listened to what they had to say back to me. I think Mormon Stories is helpful that way because you hear people's stories who you can relate to and learn from and listen to and learn from. So I would say do all those things. And I would say if you can, speak up to trusted friends around you who can help you. Tell them how you feel. I had that in my life when I was struggling and trying to figure out what to do next. Of course, reading on the internet helps, I guess, some because there's data out there to make you feel like, okay, I'm not a shameful person. I am made for a purpose. I think reading, I don't want to promote here, but I think this book might help people with that journey. I didn't write it to be sort of a handbook for anyone who is struggling, but I did write it with that in mind that, okay, someone's going to come to this book and probably have a lot of the feelings I had and try to figure out what I did. Because that's what I was doing. I was reading books to figure out what other people did about this problem, hoping I could glean what I should do about it. So hopefully people see that there is something to be learned from reading the book. And I don't know about the church. I don't know if I understand the basic sort of eternal progression doctrine is so deeply entrenched that there's no way they can see conceivably that a gay marriage could happen in their temples. Maybe it could in the congregations, though, right? Maybe that's the first step, accepting people into the congregation who may be different,
Not excommunicating
and
them.
not excommunicating them, not making them feel less than, and using them in a positive way, even if it means even if it means that you take baby steps to get there in understanding other people. They got these groups, I guess, that sometimes meet in some of the wards, and I don't know. They got to get at some point past the whole idea of you can be gay here and you can be gay here and act on it. That whole act on it thing has got to be figured out. I get again why they think that, but what are you supposed to do then? I mean, what was I supposed to do? I asked myself that question, and Teresa and we've sat and asked that question as well so many times. What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to be miserable? Just,
because the options are celibacy for a gay Mormon, mixed orientation marriage, and then hopefully not the more tragic and one where people are not quite around anymore.
Yeah.
So they don't have a lot of options. And so,
or apostatize and get excommunicated, right?
Right.
And find the love of your life. It's not
Yeah.
not a great set of choices.
Really not. If you believe the church is true, then you got to think it makes you doubt all that truth you think you know. That is clearly not in keeping with the actual truth, which is who you are, which has to have a place also in the world. And I just don't think the two can really coincide, honestly. I think the church has to change drastically for that to ever happen. And I just don't know if that's possible.
You just made me think of a quote. The truth of who you are should trump any other truth.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's so important, right? Because at the end of the day, you've got to, you got to live with yourself as an individual, and every human is important. So, yeah, making sure that is right first, it does make everything else kind of fall into place. And for you to be able to then decode what is really not truth, if that truth isn't right first, right?
Yeah. It's not that you
Right.
can't make sacrifices in your life sometimes, obviously, but if you're spending your life suppressing and running from who you are, how can you ever really show up for other people? You know what I mean?
Right.
I think.
Goes back to what I said about being a grumpy dad sometimes when I was like hiding all this, is that you can't be great at that job if you're, again, you're not living who you are. You're not living any truth, and you're miserable inside because you're, again, fraudulent.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel good. It's not good for your kids. The kids talk about it in the book. Everybody has as you mentioned, sort of first person point of view where they share their thoughts. And I was so proud of them, and I let them write whatever they wanted, by the way, not up to me. But they wrote, "This is the happiest form of my family I've ever experienced, I've ever had."
There you go.
And that was so cool to hear and read. That my kids love where we're at now, and I think they're very proud of their family. And my son last Thanksgiving said that was the best, with everybody under one roof. We had a little slideshow at the end where I popped up, I'm total Mormon dad coming out here, but I popped up the slideshow of the last year and everyone's photos and all the things that we've done. And at the end of the night, up on the wall, and my son afterwards said, "This has been the best Thanksgiving ever." So that's what you want. You want everybody to feel that way,
Absolutely.
Your family is happy post-marriage, post-divorce, new partner, recoupling, things shifting around, leaving the church. What you're saying is you found some happiness with your family.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Love it. Well, Carah, it's always great to have you running shotgun. So thank you for being here today with us.
I'm so honored. Cody, you sound like you have a very cool job. I also have a very cool job that I get to interview people like you, hang out with John. So this has really been an honor. So I'm grateful to be here. It's been
Thanks
fun.
for being here, Carah. And most importantly, Cody, thank you for flying from freaking Nashville to do a 2-hour interview to then fly back. It's a busy couple of weeks for you promoting this amazing book. The book is Here's the Thing, Lessons on Listening, Life, and Love. Cody Alan, forward by Keith Urban. It's a great book. Everyone should go buy it. And I just want to say your interview, your story is going to save lives, period.
Right.
Full stop. It's going to save lives. Thank you.
Agree.
I hope so. I hope people hear it and it resonates and they find hope in it. That through whatever this struggle or whatever challenge you're handed, that you can reach out to people, speak up, be yourself, and find comfort by listening to others and in a non-judgmental, empathetic way, as well as if you have something that you should talk to someone and let them help you. Let them be your listening ears to figure out how to navigate your next step. And most of all, it's in your heart. So much the book is about, there's a lot of logic in there, a lot of decisions we make on logic wise and just through your head. I just believe that intuition is often my guiding force, and the heart is so important with that. But that takes time. That takes sort of like practice. But I'm so thankful you said that, and I hope it does help a lot of people.
And so if people want to follow you and your amazing, on all the socials and all the amazing work you do, how do they follow you and support you?
Yep. At Cody Alan, CODYALAN. Alan is actually the name I went by as a kid. Cody was a made up name. I describe how that all came to be in the book, how you get that radio superstar name. I wasn't born with a sexy Ryan Seacrest name, so I had to go with Cody Alan. Eventually it's worked out, but nonetheless.
Alan Chaffetz, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And so Alan is my name. My parents called me as a kid. But anyway, so at Cody Alan for all that on Insta.
With one L.
With one L on Twitter and all the rest. So yeah.
And your shows?
Yeah, so the shows are on across the country, depending on various markets for the radio shows, and you can watch me on CMT every single weekend. I'll be on tomorrow morning, Saturday morning, and Sunday morning on CMT, depending on where you are. But basically, I think it's 9 to 12 Eastern time, probably Mountain. It might be
11 to
something like that. Kind of so just look it up. Saturday and Sunday mornings on CMT. But I do a lot of fun interviews. It's the best job in the world, and of course, lots of music news in regards to country and Western, John.
Don't make fun
We
of
got
me.
both kinds.
Don't make fun of me. Carah makes fun of me enough.
Mhm. Yeah, 2 against 1.
I love it. All right, Cody, thanks so much.
Thanks again.
Good
Thank
luck.
you, John.
And we hope we can ever return the favor. So thank you so much.
Yeah, y'all come to Nashville. Come to Nashville. We'd love to have you.
I want to do a Mormon Stories, kind of like a Thrive Nashville, because there's a lot of
Yeah.
listeners in Nashville and the surrounding area. So we'd love to come and maybe do a Thrive in Nashville.
I'd love it. And if I can be of help that day,
Keynote.
I would love it.
You're the keynote.
Of course. It'd be my pleasure.
Would you go to Nashville to hear Cody Alan keynote?
Yeah, my sister's going to be a real big star with her name in lights one day. So I'll be doing Thrive, and then I'm going to go support my sister when she moves out.
Oh,
there.
is she going to be a country music star?
Yeah, she's a
okay.
singer-songwriter. She's really talented.
Oh,
so,
nice.
Bethany.
Yeah.
Shout out to Bethany.
Shout out to Bethany. So one day I'm going to go to Nashville to go see my sister
And
and
meet
perform
Cody.
somewhere
See Cody.
and go see Cody.
I love it.
Go
All
support
right.
the Ex-Mos out there. Go help the community out in the what's that region called? What do we call it? Like it's not the South quite, but it's like
Tennessee is
This is South.
Midwesty, Southy. I don't know.
They think
Southy. I don't think there's we call it the South.
Yeah.
Certainly.
You call it the
It's
South?
the South.
I think Virginia kind of starts the South, right, and then below.
There's
Everyone
this thing
argue in
called
the
the
comments.
Mason-Dixon line,
All right.
and
Yeah, there you go.
things below it, and that's the South.
Everyone, please argue in the comments. All right.
All right. Well, Cody, thanks so much.
Thanks again.
Carah, again, thanks. And again, thanks to all the listeners that make Mormon Stories podcast possible. The donations are what keep Carah in a job, me in a job, that allow for Gerardo and this amazing cinematography and equipment and the broadband and the storage and the editing, Brooklyn, all this stuff. Huge shout out to those who support us. We lose 10, 20 donors every month because people fall on financial hard times or lose interest or move on or support some other cool thing. And that's all great. We're happy to give Mormon Stories podcast away for free. And if you're in a position to become a monthly donor, less than 1 out of 1,000 of you who watch or listen actually are contributors. So if you're in a position to fill in the holes of the donors we lose every month, we would love your support. You can just go to mormonstories.org, click on the donate button, become a monthly donor at whatever level you're comfortable. And our pledge to you is to use 100% of your donations to further the mission of the Open Stories Foundation, which is to educate people, to provide informed consent for people in or out of the church. So no more gay teenagers will join Mormonism if it's not going to end up well for them. So informed consent is huge, but then also just supporting Mormons who are experiencing a faith transition, and for people who have to leave Mormonism or other high demand religions. We have a lot of listeners that are ex-Baptist, ex-Jehovah's Witness, ex-Scientologist, ex-Orthodox Jew, whatever. We try and support people who are trying to build a happy, healthy life outside of Orthodox religion. So please support us if you can. We're 100% transparent in our finances. It's tax deductible in the US, and we need your support. So thanks for your support. Thanks to Jeremy for helping to make this happen. Shout out to you. And just most importantly, be good to each other, be kind to each other. Buy this book, Here's the Thing by Cody Alan. We'll have all of this in the show notes. And most importantly, we'll see you guys all again very soon on another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks again, Cody.
Thank you. That's awesome.